I'm Mars Gaston, and I will be touching on heteronormativity in schools. Heteronormativity is a system that assigns favors and disadvantages to individuals based on gender and sexuality. This plays a significant role in general atmospheres of modern schools. Teens who do not comply to gender and sexuality standards at school are vulnerable to victimization. Queering frameworks permit the existence of complicated identities. When schools have queer inclusive practices and policies, students feel much safer. Studies show that almost 24% of adolescents in general suffer school victimization at least once, and nearly 9% encounter it regularly. Young people who are witnesses to bullying or other forms of victimization at school are more likely to develop negative coping mechanisms, have poor psychological health, and perform dangerous acts. Researchers and students and school personnel have all developed strategies to promote safety and prevent the victimization of gender nonconforming and queer students. These include having a clearly defined anti-harassment regulation, having teacher interventions, and having student groups such as GSAs, which stands for Gay Straight Alliances. Here's a table that depicts the relationships between research components such as safety for nonconforming females and males, violence at school, harassment for gender nonconformity, LGBTQ inclusive curriculum, access to LGBTQ information, and teacher intervention in harassment. Even though gender nonconformity-based harassment is common, more than half of the students in the study thought that their schools were safe for gender nonconforming students. This disparity between perceived school safety and actual complaints of harassment are an indication of the implicit heteronormativity in schools. Older students are more aware of the heteronormative demands, and as a result are more likely to feel that nonconformity is not a safe option for them, steering them away from their own identities. While inclusive school rules and the presence of GSA were not significant for safety, having these may be necessary preconditions for this safety. There are certain limitations to these studies, such as not including markers of individual students' own level of gender nonconformity and their own experiences of personal safety. Overall, research shows that teachers should be taught how to accommodate children who do not adhere to gender and sexuality standards, and schools should employ safe school measures that include LGBTQ problems. This way, there can be more proactiveness through the schools.
Hi, my name is Keegan Lee, and I will be discussing undoing homophobia in schools. A tiny group of educators is striving to assist pupils in managing and overcoming classroom silencing. Long-term objective includes upsetting the institutional and cultural structures that are responsible for producing and preserving this deafening silence. An advocacy program for a local school system to take a progressive position against homophobia in public schools was initiated by a task group comprised of lesbian and homosexual individuals. Educators need to take a hard look at their own beliefs, practices, and relationships if they want to bring about a more equitable atmosphere in the classroom. If educators decide not to take an action, they should be prepared to answer for their role in creating circumstances in classrooms that lead students to experience emotional distress. I'm also going to be talking to you about responding to heteronormativity, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and asexual preserve teachers' dreams and fears. LGBTQ teachers struggle to teach in heteronormativity educational environments and so desire to come out, serve as role models, and build safe spaces. Many schools are heteronormativity. Organizations that create a closet for queer instructors and force them to make judgments about the amount to which they communicate their sexual orientation. Teachers feel it's important to express their sexual orientation to be a role model for queer students for their own mental well-being and to respond to homophobia in schools. As a result of heteronormative norms, preserved teachers had to decide how far they would come out to their peers. Educators need to teach teachers how to be free from ideas of appropriativeness, normalcy, and ordinariness by talking about sexual orientation, heterosexism, homophobia, and biophobia in teacher preparation programs. Queering teacher education pedagogy means helping preserve teachers' names, the norms set by schools, practices, and their own experience from queering those norms to make room for differences and giving preserved teachers the power to imagine possibilities within and beyond gender and sexuality for children in schools.